Hey, Quentin, how you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Doing well, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Our weather's a little muggy here. I don't know what yours looks like.
It's Arkansas. Guess. It's pretty muggy here, too, to be honest with you.
Sweating.
It's feeling muggy out now. But you know what? I'll take muggy this way instead of it falling on me from the sky. And we've had our share of rain here in central Arkansas. Brogdon, tell us real quickly about what the Postal Service is thinking about doing. This reminds me of the movie Logan, by the way. I'm a big movie buff. Did you see Logan?
Yes. It's been a while, but yes.
You remember they had the autonomous trucks in it?
Yes. Yes.
So now we're seeing movies and fiction become reality, correct?
That's right. Autonomous vehicles and autonomous trucks are no longer the stuff of science fiction. They're on our roads right now to a degree that I think if most of us understood, it would alarm us perhaps. Our Postal Service is entering into a 2-week test program with a company called Too Simple, if you can imagine that, where they're going to make these round trips, 2,100-mile round trips between Phoenix and Dallas, and they're going to go through 3 states, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, with these autonomous trucks. Now, they'll have human drivers sitting in them, quote-unquote, ready to take the steering wheel or apply the brakes if necessary, but this is what we're moving towards now. Trucking is a $700 billion industry, and about a third of that is the trucking driver costs. And if these trucking companies and the shippers can eliminate that cost, and we have a big shortage of truck drivers as well, then there's a huge financial incentive to do this. And the question is, are we jeopardizing safety in doing it?
Okay. Well, let's just ask you, what is your take on this right now? I mean, they're going to have somebody sitting in the cab and taking over if something goes wrong. I mean, the only way that you can perfect this is to actually get out on the roads and test it, correct?
That's true, and the argument in favor of moving towards these vehicles is to point out that most crashes, over 90% are caused by human error. So you take that out of the equation, then the theory is it'll be a safer world we're all operating in one day. The problem is you're introducing new errors into the equation. These autonomous vehicles, a lot of people think, they just operate on GPS, but GPS is only accurate to within 1 or 2 feet, so they have all these other sensors. LiDAR, which is a set of light sensors, light waves, about 1.5 million pulses of light per second. It actually can paint, a 3-dimensional map, but it needs line of sight. And if it's raining or if there's construction on a road and the lines aren't painted, that can really throw these autonomous systems into a tizzy, if you will. And we've seen some spectacular crashes, not yet involving trucks, but a number of Tesla ones in particular, where the systems got confused and either took over or crashed into the side of a turning truck in front of a Tesla and sheared the roof off. We've had at least 2 of those now. And so these things are still in development. They're still being perfected, and some people are going to die who otherwise wouldn't die while we're testing them. And the question we have to face as a society is, are we okay with that if more lives are saved, in the long run?
Yeah, so the question comes is, how do you work the bugs out of the system? Because you got to get on the road to do that. And here's my question. Who's at fault at that point? Is it going to be the company that owns the trucks? Is it going to be the people who did the IT work on the trucks? I mean, who's going to hold the bag in the end? Have you all talked about that?
Sure, those are great questions, Dave, and it's going to change automobile insurance. More and more companies that sell these and develop the software may be buying more insurance and less individuals. If we get to a truly autonomous world where I can jump in my car does all the driving, and I have no responsibilities to take over the driving under any circumstances, then you can see legally it would be very hard to make me, the human driver, responsible. Right now, we're in a partially autonomous world. So, for instance, with Tesla's position is the human driver has responsibilities to take over. Even though Tesla markets their cars making them sound like they're complete. The feature's called autopilot in a Tesla, which makes it sound like the car will drive itself.
Right.
But once a Tesla driver's in a crash, whether they're killed or injured or whatever, Tesla's position in most of these crashes is, well, the driver should have taken over sooner.
Yeah, it's interesting because this brings up all kinds of new questions, because not only for, as you were just talking about insurance, I was talking about the legalities of it and who's going to be responsible for the car or truck that's on the road. But the other thing that's going to change, and we've talked about this quite often here on the Dave Elswick Show, every week we do an hour during my show Monday through Friday to talk about changes in automobiles, things you should be doing to keep your automobile running right, and things of that nature. But we've also talked about autonomous cars and trucks, and we said, you're going to have these over the road trucks out there doing all this driving. A lot of the road truck drivers are going to be displaced, except that we have heard that there's going to be like these hubs that the trucks come to. They're not going to go to all these different places, and they're going to have drivers at the hubs to drive the cargo, so to speak, to the final destination. Is that something that you all are hearing as well?
Yes, there have been different systems, floated out there and thoughts about it. Right now, the thinking is that because a lot of these trucking routes involve interstates where you don't have to stop and start as much, it's a prime area and a prime, set of circumstances in which to use these automated vehicles. The problem is, if I'm on the road in my little, BMW Mini or whatever I'm driving, and there's a monster 18-wheeler behind me, beside me, that's autonomous, or heaven forbid, a convoy of them, and it's still being tested, understandably, that makes me, the driver on the road, a little nervous. And
right.
I'm not sure I want to be the one who takes one for the team just to help perfect the technology.
Well, the other thing is once let's just say they do they get the technology up where they're fairly certain, 98% or whatever, certain that the trucks are not going to have any problems. But accidents are going to happen, and when they do, is the computer going to be able to communicate with the driver of the automobile or truck that it strikes, to be able to communicate with it and get the right people out there? How do you talk to a truck without a human?
Well, anybody who's tried to use a cell phone or a laptop or any piece of technology, or even your system in your automobile, they're getting better now, but even as recently as just a few years ago, so many of those electronic systems in our cars were almost unusable. They were too complicated to use as you're rolling down the road. You needed to read, an encyclopedic user manual, and they weren't intuitively engineered. And so it's an open question whether the designers and engineers of these systems are up to the challenge of engaging humans, keeping them vigilantly engaged as they're driving down the road, because it's hard for me, once I get in the mode of being able to check my cell phone as my Tesla's going down the road, it's hard for me also to keep one eye on the road and understand I have to maybe put my hands back on the wheel and take control. And for Tesla or any other company to say, well, it beeped at you, it alerted you. Anybody who's sat in a hospital and seen nurses ignore alarms going off in hospital rooms, and even loved ones ignoring them because they are going off constantly, knows that's what humans do. When we're beeped at, it becomes white noise in the background after a certain very short period of time.
So my question is, have the folks at the United States Postal Service had people like you come in and sit down and talk to them about, are you contemplating problems that you might be running into that right now you've not contemplated at all?
I don't know the answer specifically as to the Postal Service. I do know this because I've made a living now, basically at the 30-year point of my career. Many of my cases have involved products liability cases. I've sued automobile manufacturers and others. And we all presume, even I presume, that when we pick up a product or we jump in a car or we use something that has the potential to injure us, that it's been engineered, that all of those dangers have been thought through, and that the company has made a vigilant, diligent attempt to engineer out the dangers and to safeguard us. But what I've discovered when I take depositions and question engineers and get the documents is oftentimes products are put together with a lot less forethought and a lot less concern about safety than most of us would want to believe. And if we really understand that, it's kind of unsettling. We just presume everything's been tested and automobile tires, if you run them a certain number of hours, they will disintegrate. Nobody's told that. Nobody's told if you drive on your tires for 10 hours, they will get so hot that they will start to come apart on the highway. No one's told that. No one's told don't drive your car for 10 hours. Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about.
All right. Well, if someone wants to learn more about this, have you written any articles? Do you have a website? Do you have someplace that people can go and to contemplate what's happening here?
Sure. My law firm website is Crain, C-R-A-I-N, Lewis, Lewis.com. And yes, I've written a published article on it, and I've spoken at lawyer conferences about it. It's a developing area, needless to say, and lawyers and others are going to be watching. It seems like every week there's a new headline related to autonomous vehicles, and now we're going to see trucks there. And unfortunately, I predict, and it pains me to predict it, we're going to see some truck crashes ultimately.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Quentin. Thank you for joining us. I will find your articles. We'll apply them to my Facebook page and make sure people can find them easily so that they can read this. It's going to be something everybody's going to be keeping their eye on. It's something that's coming down the road. We all know it's going to get here. It's just how is it going to get here and how safely can we make the transition?
All right, Dave, you're right. Well said.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Quentin Brogdon here on the Dave Elswick Show. It's really it's a topic that the time is now to talk about it.